Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I am your host. My name is Daphne Royce. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. Electric cars has been a very popular choice in California in recent years. A few U.S. states has mandates requiring all new cars to be zero-emission vehicles after 2035. Jerry Pohorsky is Silicon Valley chapter president of Electric Vehicle Association. Let's welcome Jerry to share with us his insights. Hello, Jerry.
Hi there. Welcome.
Please tell us what you do and how did you become involved with Electric Vehicle Association?
Okay, it's kind of a long story. I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. There's a lot of problems in the world today, and the one that I focus on is air pollution. I want to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Whether you believe that global warming or climate change are a result of human activity, there's no denying that humans cause air pollution. If you recall recently during the pandemic, when people were shut down and nobody was driving on the roads, all of a sudden the skies became crystal clear. And then after they allowed people to go back to work again, they got smoggy. I mean, you couldn't even see the hills on some days, especially now with the wildfires. And, you know, that's another issue, but we'll just stick with the air pollution for now. So what is the causes of air pollution? Well, there's multiple sources, and the one that I focus on is using fossil fuels to power our vehicles. And solving this problem is a huge endeavor that takes a lot of people making a coordinated effort. There's only so much that one person can do, so there's many groups and organizations that have been formed to tackle this problem. One of those groups is the Electric Vehicle Association. I joined that group when it was called the Electric Auto Association about 20 years ago. And we had a meeting, and the former president of the Silicon Valley chapter announced that he was moving out of the area and looking for a replacement. So nobody else raised their hand, so I volunteered and I became the president.
What does the Electric Vehicle Association do, and why you change your name from Electric Auto to Electric Vehicle?
Excellent question. In a nutshell, we're a nonprofit organization that promotes the wider adoption of electric vehicles in general and electric cars in particular. We're sort of like a car club in some respects, where we display our electric cars at various public events around Earth Day and other times throughout the year. We've been invited by companies on their health fairs to come and display vehicles and, you know, give presentations. We hand out literature, and we have paid members that receive a monthly newsletter, colorful PDF, and then there's some videos associated with that. And then we have free local chapter meetings here in the Silicon Valley that are either in person or online via Zoom. And we have a website that we can mention at the end.
You probably have the first-hand information. Do we have alternative zero-emission vehicles other than electric cars?
Yeah, we do. And the one in particular that seems to be getting some attention is the hydrogen fuel cells. And really, those are electric cars too. They have an electric motor, they have a small battery, and the main difference is instead of a large battery that moves the car along, they have a fuel cell that burns hydrogen and emits water and oxygen, I guess. Or water vapor is the main. It uses oxygen from the air and hydrogen from a compressed tank, usually in the trunk, and then it puts water vapor on the ground. And I actually drove one of them, and I was told to press a button on the dashboard so the water comes out on the road, because if you don't, it'll come out in your driveway, kind of like when the air conditioning sometimes leaves a little water in your driveway or in your car garage or whatever. So there's other vehicles that I've heard of where they kind of use mechanical energy, like, you know, winding up a coiled spring, but those things only go for a few minutes and they're not practical.
We had our first electric cars in 1967. Why does it take so long to develop electric cars?
Let me mention that it was actually much earlier than that. In the late 1800s, they had electric cars. And in New York City, in the year 1900, 1/3 of the cars were electric. There were other cars that were steam powered, and then there was some gasoline powered cars. So 1/3 of them was electric. The steam wasn't really practical. It took several minutes to build up a head of steam, and so those didn't catch on. The electric cars were very popular, especially among women. The reason for that is that in order to start the motor, you had to crank it with a hand crank that was usually in the front of the car. And occasionally the motor would backfire and the crank would spin the opposite direction of the person that was trying to crank it. So it could actually break your arm if you didn't let go in the nick of time. So women didn't like that. And they also had kind of a smelly exhaust. They didn't like that either. So the thing that kind of turned it around, oh, by the way, the electric cars at that point in time, they could only go about 25 miles on a charge, and they would have a top speed of maybe 25 miles an hour. So they were good inside of New York City, but if you wanted to go between cities, they would be kind of slow. And then there weren't really any places to charge the batteries along the road. So within the city, you could charge them and you'd be okay. But out in the wild, between New York and New Jersey, for example, it didn't work. So the thing that actually made the electric car kind of fade away and the gasoline car to become more popular was electric starter motor. There was an engineer named Charles Kettering who worked for a company called Delco, which is part of General Motors. And he took an electric motor and he used it to crank the gasoline motor instead of having a hand crank. And then he had a little button on the dashboard that would energize the electric motor. And then when the gasoline motor started, you let go of the button and then it would run. And women love that. Push the button and away we go. And then you can go a longer distance. And then, they would have refueling stations to get more gasoline. So you could go longer distances and faster. So within a few short years, the electric car kind of faded into oblivion. And the reason it's taken so long is because the first car I had was it was kind of built in 1967, but I didn't actually get mine until 1999. And it was a GM EV1 that I had. And it was a kind of a spaceship looking car. It looked like it was from the Jetsons. And it had batteries in it. They were lead acid batteries, similar to the starter batteries that gasoline cars still have today. So those 12-volt batteries, I had 24 of them in the car. And they would take the car maybe as much as 80 miles if you drove it really slow. If you drove at freeway speeds, it'd be more like 40 miles. And the energy in those batteries was the equivalent energy of 1/2 of a gallon of gasoline. Gasoline has a lot of energy per gallon compared to the batteries. So the reason it took so long to get an electric car was because of all the technology that had to develop to be able to come up with batteries and the motor and all the electronics associated with that to be able to go reasonable distances on a freeway speed with just the batteries. So it's always the battery, stupid.
That's a very interesting stories you tell us. How about batteries? How many type of batteries we have
I would
today?
say, in a nutshell, too many to mention. Most of them are not worth mentioning because they're kind of laboratory experiments with different chemistries, and they don't turn out to be practical. Ever since I've been in the Electric Vehicle Association, they have had presentations from companies that make batteries, and usually they're kind of in their prototype stage. So they come to our meeting, they show what a great battery they're having, and they get all our hopes up. And then somebody says, well, when can we buy one? And they said, well, it'll probably take about 5 years. So 5 years later, we contact the company. Yeah, we had some problems, so we'll be ready in about another 5 years. So right now, the lithium batteries are the ones that are the most popular, and we don't have to wait 5 years, although they did take many, many years to get to the point where you can run an electric car. They first started showing up in the batteries on a computer where it maintains the day and the time. So when you turn the computer on, it knows what day it is and what time it is. That little lithium battery in the computer lasts 10 years, and it's about the size of a quarter. So that was kind of like the first practical lithium batteries. I think they also used them for hearing aids and stuff like that. But as time went on, they were able to make them larger and larger, and then they started powering cell phones, laptop computers, CD players, digital cameras, and stuff like that. And then they evolved even more, and they can make them bigger. And finally, they come up with some battery in the year like 2000 or so. Well, actually a little before that, let's say 1997. They came up with a battery that was suitable for use in a car, like the one that I had, the GM EV1. And it would take that car, the lead acid battery, they claimed it would take it 80 miles. And then there was a Russian guy named Stanley Ovshinsky that came up with a nickel metal hydride battery. They had them already for, cameras and phones and stuff like that. But something suitable for a car, he made them out of sheets of material that he would roll on a press. And he automated the process, and he had his company named after him. It was called Ovonics, after Ovshinsky. So General Motors bought that company because this guy was spending money faster than he could earn it. So when GM bought it, he got a whole bunch of cash, and he was happy. And then later on, there's a movie that talks about the demise of the GM EV1. And at that point in time, GM sold that company to Texaco. And then Texaco didn't do anything with it, and they were acquired by Chevron. Chevron said, oh, yeah, we've got these batteries, but if you try to buy one, they said, well, we don't really have any stores available, and we don't sell them any other way, so put your name on the waiting list, and we'll get back to you. Nobody ever got any batteries out of Chevron. But what Chevron did was there's a licensing agreement that they had with Panasonic. And Panasonic in Japan was making a nickel metal hydride battery that eventually was also used in the EV1 and also a Toyota RAV4, which is what I have now. So they said to Panasonic, you're not paying enough royalties for this patent that we have, and we're going to increase the amount that you have to pay. And Panasonic said, well, wait a minute. We've made some improvements. Why don't we do a cross-licensing agreement? You can use our improvements and have access to our patents, and then we'll be even Steven. Well, Chevron said no. So there was a big lawsuit, and it ended up in court, and the final outcome was sealed, so nobody really knows. But my observation is that the batteries that I had in my car, they have a rating, a power rating of 95 amp hours. And since that court case was settled and the results were sealed, Panasonic has never come up with another a nickel metal hydride battery greater than 30 amp hours. And a lot of those are used like in a Prius still, and other applications where you don't need a big battery to drive the whole car for a long distance. But the thing that kind of made that all irrelevant was the lithium battery. Lithium batteries have more energy per pound or per cubic inch or whatever than the nickel metal hydride battery. So they have pretty much dominated the battery market right now. And it's taken a number of years, and they evolve at about 8% per year in terms of the price going down and the amount of energy storage going up. And so now we have cars that can go, 500 miles on a charge.
Regarding lithium batteries,
Yes.
will we ever run out of resources? And if a lithium battery can last 10 years, are they recyclable? Would that make any impact on the environment?
Yes, they are recyclable. And backing up about, will we run out of lithium? Right now, there's a lot of lithium mining going on in China, and they don't have an EPA over there. So people say that's kind of a dirty thing. And it's true. It's not a real pretty sight. And then there's a area in Nevada that they found a huge lithium deposit, but it also happens to be Indian burial grounds. So the Indians don't want their ancestors' tombs to be, uprooted to get at the lithium. So that's sort of in court right now. There's a saltwater lake, I guess you could call it, in Southern California called the Salton Sea. And it's got extremely heavy amounts of salt in it, which also has a lot of lithium dissolved in the water. So there's a project going on now to somehow get the lithium out of that salt water. And they claim that will make a huge difference. there's other states in the United States that have lithium deposits, and companies are kind of jockeying for position to put mines in and so forth. And there may be some new technology that gets developed that kind of replaces lithium. I keep getting emails about that, but it's all kind of like, well, buy this stock. Well, I don't think so. Anyway, I digress. So I think lithium is it for now. And in terms of recycling, there's one in particular company I'm aware of. The guy that used to be the chief technical officer for Tesla, a guy named J.B. Straubel, Stanford grad, he left Tesla. And he started a company up in Nevada called Redwood Materials. And what they do is they take any lithium battery, electric toothbrush, cell phone, cordless drill, batteries from electric cars, computer batteries, all sorts of stuff. And they basically grind them up and then capture the various chemicals. Not only there's lithium, but there's nickel and cobalt and other things that he's able to recover. And so when the batteries, eventually, I think the standard is 80%. So when the electric car battery degrades to about 80% of its original capacity, it won't go as far, but it'll still go. But it's time to quote unquote replace it. So at that point, you'll get some fresh batteries, and then the old ones can be recycled. So that way we get back all of those materials. And that's probably as good as mining in terms of the quality of the material, although it is a little more expensive right now because the process is kind of complicated.
Well, that's wonderful news.
Yeah, there's actually a Rotary Club in Los Altos that partnered up with Redwood Materials, and they had local kind of one of those days where you can drop off all your lithium-powered devices that aren't working anymore. I've been trying to get a hold of them to see when the next one is, but haven't heard yet.
Do you know whose electric vehicles has the longest distance per charge right now?
Yeah, the one that seems to be gathering the most attention is one called Lucid. It's spelled Lucid. And ironically, the building that they have where they're doing all their R&D is in Newark, California, next to Fremont. And Fremont is where Tesla has their big factory. And the guy that started Lucid was the guy that designed the Tesla Model S. And so now they got something called the Lucid Air. And it's a kind of a pricey vehicle, but then the Tesla Model S was pricey also. So it's a nicer looking car in a lot of people's opinions. And they've got several models available. The top of the line model, I think, is over $100,000, but it will go 500 miles on a charge. So that's kind of like the one that's gathering a lot of attention. There's another vehicle that's kind of in development. They've got some prototypes. It's a 3-wheeled vehicle. Technically, it's called a motorcycle, but it looks kind of like a spaceship or an airplane without wings. And a company is called Aptera. They're down in the San Diego area. They've been around for about 10 years, and they kind of went bankrupt. I think they had a partnership with Ford for a while, and then the original founders bought it back from Ford recently, and they've improved the design of it. And they've come out with solar panels that are on the front hood of the car, on the roof of the car, and on the tailgate of the car. Not the tailgate, well, hatchback, I guess. And so it's covered with solar panels. And they say if you leave it out in the sun all day, it can capture as much as 40 miles of driving range. But it's a very super aerodynamic car, very light. It's made out of carbon fiber composites. And it's only a 2-seater side by side, only holds 2 people, but it does have some cargo space, and you can actually put a tent on the back of it and camp in it if you want. They've got a picture on their website showing the tent trailer or the tent part of it in a park somewhere. Anyway, so they claim that one of their versions, not the one they're coming out with first in 2024 sometime, they say they'll be making them available. They're taking deposits. They have a huge list of people that have already spent the money to get in line. And so that car will, I think, have around 400 miles of range, the one that they're coming out with in 2024. But they're working on a longer range one that they claim will go 1,000 miles on a charge. Now, between you and me, I can't drive more than about an hour or 2 before I need to stop and use a restroom somewhere. So having 1,000 miles of range is a questionable goal, but I guess they're going to try to make a name for themselves that way.
Well, not if it is a self-driving car, right?
It's not self-driving, but there are some self-driving cars out there. Google years ago started a division called Waymo. And so they've got cars running around in Phoenix. I think some of them are actually minivans. Their first car was kind of a little cutesy two-seater. And so they've been driving around. I see them on the road periodically. And then there's other car companies. GM's got one called the Cruise, and they kind of got a lot of negative publicity in San Francisco because sometimes they would just stop in the middle of an intersection for no apparent reason. And I guess there was one time the fire truck was trying to get through and the car was blocking the intersection. And this is insane. The solution that Cruise proposed when they have a situation like that is to get an electric saw and saw the roof off of the car and tow it away. You know, it's kind of like, that's your solution? Why don't you just program it to get out of the intersection? That's my opinion.
They should have a button or something, right? Just push a button
something.
and just,
yeah. Well, they sent somebody out half an hour later to get in the car and reboot it, you know, but half an hour for a fire truck to wait that's on an emergency call is unacceptable. And there's some politics going on in the city of San Francisco about allowing self-driving cars to operate, what hours they can operate, whether they can charge money or not. And I think Cruise originally, they had to run only at night and only for free. But I'm not sure what the latest is. Apparently, the city council is a little more lenient about what they can do than the citizens are. The citizens are more upset about it. And now they got protests going on. They take these orange cones and they kind of put them there in front of the, you know, sensor to kind of confuse the car.
let's talk about charging stations.
Okay.
Can we unify the charging port to have a one style fit all?
There is a charging standard that was developed by the Society of Automotive Engineers, SAE, and they gave it a number. They called it J, which stood for like joint, because they had a joint meeting with all these groups. So it's J1772. 1772 is how people tend to pronounce it, J1772. And in our club, we just call it the J plug. So that is on every electric car, except the Tesla. So all the Ford cars, all the GM cars, all the Toyota cars, all the Nissan cars, they all have the J plug. Tesla has a special plug that has, you know, fewer pins in it. It only has 2 pins. The other ones have 5. And so what has happened is Elon Musk said, you know what? I've got like 80,000 charging stations and I'm adding more every day, and only Tesla people can use them. But if I let anybody use them, that way I could get money from these people. So they've come up with an adapter that you can plug into the J plug of your car, and then you can use the Tesla charging station 2-pin kind of a connector to go in there. So you can kind of bridge the gap and sort of, you know, have this adapter so that you can charge at charging stations. So all of a sudden there's 80,000 new charging stations that people that don't have a Tesla can all of a sudden start using. And then the automaker said, well, this adapter is, you know, good, but wouldn't it be nice if we just had the plug so you could just plug in with the 2-pin thing instead of the 5-pin thing and be done with it? And the only time that the 5-pin thing comes in handy is when you're doing something called a DC fast charge. So maybe I should back up a little bit and talk about the charging levels. We have something called level 1, which is your ordinary wall outlet, 120 volts. And it would take all night long, basically, to charge a car. In fact, my wife has what we call a plug-in hybrid, and it basically takes 4 or 5 hours to charge using 120 volt, what we call level 1 charger that comes with the car. So that works great. Just plug it into the outlet and then, you know, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and you're ready to go. But that's not good enough for some people. So they have what they call level 2 charger, which is more power, but you need a 240 volt outlet in order to do that. Some people have that in their garage for electric dryer. Some people don't. Most of the public charging stations that I've seen in supermarket parking lots, and some companies have them in their company parking lot. And even people, you know, that you can get a portable one and just, you know, find somebody like in a RV park, you know, that has a outlet for a motorhome. You can plug your 240 volt adapter that's similar to the one that comes with a car. You can buy them on Amazon or Home Depot or whatever. So you can get those level 2 chargers for $200 or $300. And at the level 2, you have that 5-pin J plug. So companies like GM and Ford have announced that, you know what, we're going to get rid of that 5-pin plug on our new cars. We're just going to go with the 2-pin plug. So the people at Tesla came up with a catchy name for it. They call it the North American Charging Standard. And you can use it also for fast charging, DC fast charging. So you can charge a car in like 20 or 30 minutes if it'll allow you to do that. The Chevy Bolt EV, it's limited on the amount of power you can put into it. So it's going to take about 2 hours to charge, even with a fast charger. But Teslas and other cars like the Ford and some of the newer GM vehicles like the Equinox that's coming out, they'll be able to charge in less than half an hour.
Well, that's very good, right? Half
Yeah,
hour,
and
you'll go work out, come out, you're ready to go.
yeah. And you stop at a place and maybe you want to grab a bite to eat or use the facilities or whatever. So 20 minutes goes by pretty fast.
Do you think we will have a power grid issues if we only use electric cars and electric homes?
Yes, if we do nothing, there will be a problem. There's some neighborhoods right now where, everybody has a Tesla. Everybody wants to charge at the same time. And so the transformer that they have up on the pole for that neighborhood can't handle that many people charging at once. So PG&E will typically spend a lot of money and upgrade the transformer to handle the load in that neighborhood. So you do have these little hot spots where it's a problem now and they have to spend money to fix it. There's other ways around it. For example, you can have people that have solar on their roof. So they don't really use the energy so much from the PG&E. They just have something called a power wall that Tesla makes. So during the day, they have solar panels on the roof that charge up the batteries in the power wall. And then the power wall will provide power to charge the car anytime you want, regardless, and you don't have any impact on the grid at all. So you're feeding it solar and you're drawing out what you would normally get from PG&E, but it's not from PG&E, it's from this battery storage that you have. So there's other ideas that are coming out that will allow you basically to program your car to charge at different times. So if everybody charges at once, it's a problem. But if you stagger the time that they charge, you kind of level it out a little bit. And then there's talk even of small nuclear power plants. I've heard of 1 or 2 megawatt plants, and then sprinkle them all around the country rather than these huge Diablo Canyon things that power hundreds of thousands of users. This thing would do like one city, and that would provide enough electricity to make up for building another natural gas or God forbid coal power plant. And then the grid itself, the wires that go between the power stations and the or the power plants and the customer, the wires that they have for those things, they're limited capacity. So the idea of having a lot of smaller charging stations kind of distributed rather than centralized, and then run the energy over long distances, just make it closer to where the usage is.
Gary, in the beginning of the interview, you mentioned about clear air during the pandemic.
Yes.
And I understand Attorney General Rob Bonda is suing the electric and gas company for misleading the public about climate change. What is your view on this?
It's about time. For years, they've been misleading the public, and they actually employ scientists, and these scientists do special experiments and conduct these evaluations and generate data and then publish these reports. And, basically you can use statistics to prove anything you want. So they use the statistics to say, oh, well, the global warming would have happened anyway, the ice age happens and global warming happens, it's all related to, natural cycles that have nothing to do with mankind. Well, finally, people have been able to get access to internal documents that are within the oil companies that, admit that they're making up this stuff and it's really a lie. So finally they got caught, and so now they're being sued. We'll see what happens, because, the politics of the courts, that could be influenced by lobbyists. And so it could go either way, but I think it's a good step. And rather than making just a company liable, you can't get a company to pay you anything. It's not an individual. So they're actually going after the CEO, individuals that they can sue by name.
And also, I'd like to ask you if you can share your view on the Sony documentary film, Who Killed the Electric Car?
Yeah, that was an interesting film. I'm in about 10 seconds of that film. What they did was back in the days of the EV1, they said, this car proves that an electric car can get people around and, do your normal commute or whatever driving you do. And if you have charging stations along the highway, you can go great distances. For example, Nissan put charging stations all the way from Monterey up to Lake Tahoe and Reno, I think even, all along Interstate 80 and I think, the local roads, like 101 and 680 and 880 around the Bay Area. So all the way from basically Monterey, you could drive and find a charging station like every 40 miles between Monterey and, the Sierras. That kind of shows that these things are practical. But the automakers were claiming, and at the time they may have been right. I mean, the Toyota RAV4 that I'm driving right now was made in Japan by Toyota. It wasn't a conversion or anything. They made about 1,200 of these electric cars because at that time, the Air Resources Board said, well, if GM can do it, other people can do it. So we're going to require that 10% of all the cars being sold in California are zero emission cars. Otherwise, they can't sell any cars in California. We just won't let them do it. So the automakers said, well, that doesn't sound right. Why penalize us? And so they said that the electric car that I have, the RAV4, they were selling it for $45,000. The gasoline version was selling for about $25,000, same car, basically. And so they said, well, it's costing us $100,000 to make this car, and we're only selling it for $45,000. So we're losing money on every one. So the fewer we make, the better off we are. So they pushed back against the Air Resources Board and said, you know what? We don't want 10%. We want less. So they said, okay, how about 8%? No, that wasn't good enough. How about 6%? Sorry, we're not interested, and we're not going to play your game. So they had lobbyists and, they were going back and forth. So finally, they decided to have a hearing. In 2003, they had a hearing and they say, well, we'll take input from the public. That's me. And we'll take input from the automakers. And we'll have this big meeting in Sacramento and we'll decide what to do with this mandate. So I actually drove my EV1 up there. I ended up going part of the way, charged for a while, went all the way up to Davis, stayed in a hotel overnight, charged the rest of the way, and drove into Sacramento in time for the meeting. And then I was told that, well, you're going to be on the second day because we got so many speakers already lined up to give their testimony. So I said, okay, I'll stay another day. And so the automakers were allowed to go first, and they put up their PowerPoint presentation saying how, this was totally unfair. They couldn't do this and, blah, blah, blah. And so they would go on for half an hour or an hour. And, then finally, it was the end of the first day and some of the public speakers got to talk. And, they could talk for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And then the moderator would say, okay, your time's up. We have to get to the next speaker. So we had people from the Lung Association and, nurses and school teachers and, people that, had school buses that, were polluting diesel and all that stuff. Everybody had their chance to speak. And then finally, on the second day, they still had a whole bunch of people to go. So they were limiting people to like 3 minutes at the podium. So I had prepared this presentation that would probably take about 20 minutes. And so I basically threw that out. And I looked up at the wall and I saw this big state emblem, say Air Resources Board. And then underneath in kind of a big arc, they had Environmental Protection Agency. So, rather than my presentation, which there was no way I could get through it in time to make any coherent sense, I just, off the top of my head, I said, it seems to me that most of the recent changes to the mandate have been designed to ease the burden on the automakers. You're supposed to be part of the Environmental Protection Agency, not the Corporate Profit Protection Agency. So that's my little part of the movie. But before that, they have people that were employees of GM that were the ones that would actually meet with the public and arrange the purchase of a car or the lease of the car. They didn't actually sell them, they only leased them. So these were the EV specialists, and they would work to make sure that you got a charging station set up for your home and, arrange the financing. In my case, the electric in my garage was good enough for a dryer, but not for the car charger. So they said, you're going to have to spend $2,600 to run new wires from the circuit breakers in the back of your home to your garage. It's a 75 feet through the attic kind of a thing. And it's going to be $2,600. I said, I don't know if I can afford that. They said, okay, we'll make a deal. You pay the first 500 and we'll pay the rest of it. I said, okay, now we're talking. So that's when I got the GM EV1. So these EV specialists, they were great at, working things like that out to kind of, support the thing. And we would have meetings actually at the PG&E headquarters of all the EV1 drivers. We would get together and meet there and have like a club meeting. And they called us 21st century test pilots. So it was kind of fun and exciting. And, we had high hopes, but, at this meeting, they just kind of were making a big deal about the fuel cells, the hydrogen fuel cells, rather than having all these requirements for us to make zero emission cars with batteries, we would prefer that you allow us to make fuel cell cars instead. And then they had these different credits that they were using to kind of determine how many of these zero emission vehicles an automaker would have to provide in order to meet their diminishing requirement of 10%, 8%, 6%, 2%. I think they started or finally ended up at around 2%. Anyway, so they said, well, if you give us more credits for a fuel cell car, because they're hard to make and they're expensive, if you give us, the credit for like 40 electric vehicles for one fuel cell car, maybe then we'll be interested. And so then a car that would go on the freeway for maybe 100 miles, they would get 7 credits for that. And then a car that would go, 25 miles an hour in the neighborhood, kind of like a, one of those gem cars that they used to sell at Costco. We'll give you 1 credit for those. And then they had this crazy thing called PZEV, partial zero electric vehicle. And you still see that emblem on the back of some cars these days. Nissan Sentra was one of them. So what they claim was that, in Los Angeles, we did some tests and we measured the pollutants that came out of the tailpipe of the car compared to the air quality that the car was running in. And we actually have cleaner air coming out of the exhaust pipe than is going into the car. How could that be? If you put a car in your garage and you turn the motor on and you close the garage door, you'll be dead in a few minutes. So how could this be cleaner than the air around it? Well, they said, well, what we're measuring are these criteria pollutants. So there was a few of them that they would measure. And yeah, for those few pollutants, it would be true. But in general, it wasn't true, and it would still kill you. So anyway, they said 5 of these gasoline cars that meet this requirement for these criteria pollutions will equal 1 credit. So you could buy, or you could sell 5 Nissan Sentras, and they'll give you 1 EV credit for that toward the amount that you're required to make 2% of your vehicles, zero emission or whatever. And in the end, they had a vote. All the members of the Air Resources Board voted, and they were all being influenced by lobbyists to a great deal. I think 2 or 3 of them weren't. They were kind of more sympathetic to the public. And so they voted to just basically throw the mandate out, come back in a couple of years with something else. And so they did. Now we have something else. And finally, the something else is starting to make sense. I think Governor Newsom had a big contribution to making that when he said by the year such and such, we need no more gas-powered cars. So it's a long answer to your question.
The gas car is still going to run after 2035. Would you foresee that gas station will turn partial gas and maybe partial charging stations?
There is actually somewhere on the East Coast, there's what used to be a gasoline station. It's now electric car charging only. So one guy, just on his own, no government, influence or anything. He just decided, hey, I could charge people to plug in their electric car here. So I'll start doing that. And it's a real clean operation. The guy's got the 480 volt power coming into the gas station so he can charge a number of cars at once. And, you know, he doesn't worry about the fueling truck coming by every few days and, you know, filling up these underground tanks with gasoline anymore. And, you know, the oil dripping on the, you know, cement and stuff, all of that. So, you know, he's kind of a pioneer in that regard. And right now there's a lot of charging stations already, but with the amount of cars that are projected to be around when this thing becomes fully, you know, developed, it's not going to be enough. So President Biden has, in the IRA, he has put, I think, like $1.5 billion to, you know, increase the number of charging stations so that, you know, it'll meet the needs. Because right now, you know, there's people that, you know, want to charge their car, but they have to wait for somebody to be done first, that kind of thing.
Please tell us, how can people contact Electric Vehicle Association?
Well, we have a website. We used to have a website that was Electric Auto Association. Now we have Electric Vehicle Association. So it's EVASV. It stands for Electric Vehicle Association Silicon Valley.org. So if they go to that website, we'll have some cute electric cars showing around on a racing track. And then on the top, there's different menus. So one of the menus is an info menu. And if you scroll down that menu, there's a contact us. So if somebody fills out the form to contact us, it comes directly to me. So that's one way. There's another one along at the top of the website, all the way at the far right, or if your web browser is a little small, it'll show up on a second line. There's something called Become a Member. So the difference between that and contact us is Become a Member takes you to a different website called Club Express, where you can actually join our parent organization. The Electric Vehicle Association actually has several dozen chapters throughout the United States. There's one up in Sacramento. There's one in San Jose. We got the Silicon Valley one. There's one in San Francisco called Golden Gate chapter. So all these are local chapters. And so when you go to become a member, I think it's $55 to be a member for a year. And then you pick a chapter to affiliate with. So if you pick the Silicon Valley chapter, then $10 of your $55 comes back to us. And then you get the monthly newsletter, and there's all sorts of interesting events and information. You kind of stay up with the latest and greatest because it's a continually evolving scenario.
This is probably one of the areas that we're going to have a dramatic change in the next 10 years, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely coming. And just get back on the hydrogen fuel cell things for a while. There's a couple of problems with those. The biggest problem is the availability of the fuel. So what Toyota did, and I think Hyundai has something called a Nexus or something like that. So they have these fuel cell vehicles, and in order to run them, you have to use compressed natural gas. And so the tank is kind of bulky. So in some of the earlier ones, it took up half of the trunk. And it's a high pressure. It's like 10,000 pounds per square inch. You know, normally like a tire would be like 35 pounds per square inch. So we're talking several times the pressure in these tanks. So sometimes the tanks can leak. There's been a couple of times where the fueling stations caught fire. And there was one that had an explosion that blew a big piece of concrete all the way across the road and on the other side of the road. So there's the situations like that. And the number of vehicles sold, it's in the thousands, where the number of electric vehicles sold is in the hundreds of thousands. So the public is a little leery of the hydrogen for the most part. The ones that are sold, they kind of use sort of a bribe, if you will. What they do is when you buy or lease the car, they will give you 3 years of free hydrogen. Oh, that's a great deal. And they value that at $15,000. So after the 3 years are up, you're basically spending $5,000 a year out of your pocket to fuel these things. And with an electric vehicle like mine, I get the solar off the roof, and it puts money into, or puts electricity into the power grid during the day, and then I draw it out at night, just like a bank account. You put money in the bank one day, and then you draw it out the next day. So I put electricity into the grid from my solar during the day, and then I draw it out at night.
Thank you, Jerry, very much for your insights and informative information today.
Yeah, and there's a lot more. I've just scratched the surface.
I know you just scratched the surface. We will follow you at Electric Vehicle Associations. Maybe we would learn more going forward.
Yeah, we have a resources page too that have links to all sorts of other interesting websites, electric motorcycles and solar charging stations, and places to find out what kind of a federal tax credit you can get, and what are all the new models coming out, and how far will they go, how much do they cost, and that kind of thing.
Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Thank
Bye-bye
you.
now.